Today, I'm going to talk about Dunhill. I didn't build this one for a client. I built this one based on memories, fantasies, and dreams that I had as a young boy. Hi, I'm Paul, and that was Lucy, but she decided it was too hot in the sun. Today, we're talking about Dunhill. Dunhill, well, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again, though. Don't watch this on mobile. Watch this on a big screen TV. Get your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's talk about something completely unique, which is Dunhill. So first, let's talk about the name and where I came up with the name. If you're familiar with Dunhill, you already know, but you probably know them for lighters. But it's a British company, and they started their career doing accessories for the gentleman that was a motorer, if that makes sense. But basically, they were building accessories for gentlemen that loved to drive. So they made accessories for when you were on your motoring expedition. And that's a word that they used, by the way, motoring. But British company, a lot of heritage, been around a really long time, and they create lighters, they created bags, they created smoking accessories, essentially. And so the name, why it came to Dunhill, well, it's British, and so is a Defender, it's British. But my father was not a very wealthy man, but when he would choose something, he would choose it with care. Everything was really considered. He wouldn't buy quantity, he would buy quality, and he had very few items. One of those items was his Dunhill lighter, because he did smoke cigars and smoked a pipe occasionally. And I just remember that lighter because it was a very special item to him that he saved up to have, and he always had his Dunhill lighter along with his hanky, but and a pocket knife too. So he was the proper gentleman. And so the name just seemed to fit for how this come to be. And as a young boy, I grew up in my dad's shop where he did repairs, he did restorations, he did paint work. He was really known by a number of individuals. If they had a vehicle that was a little more difficult to work on, like a Peugeot or an Alfa Romeo, they would bring him those vehicles, or even a diesel, because diesel has just not been widely accepted in the US at that point, or even still today for the most part, unless it's a pickup truck. But just growing up around the various vehicles, and then Land Rover came into the picture when I was a pretty young boy. And I just had this attraction to Land Rovers and Range Rovers, anything British, Triumph motorcycles, Norton motorcycles, which, by the way, my father had a Triumph and a Norton motorcycle. So that's what I have just always been attracted to. And part of that was because of my father. So hence the name Dunhill. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, the color. And there was several people that I sent a text message to before I started building this. And in reality, if I would have listened to everyone, Dunhill would have never been created. It would have never come to what you see here, because I would text friends and clients that are now friends, and I said, well, just close your eyes what I'm getting ready to say. If you imagine you received a text from me and I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing a D90 soft top in purple. Well, that went over like a lead balloon, because instantly everybody thought I was going to do really a Defender that reminded you of Barney. And honestly, I was a little taken back, because as many colors as I've done over the years on a Helderburg, I don't think there's any color out there, at least correct me if I'm wrong, any color out there that just doesn't evoke a nice feeling, that would be proper on a British estate, or it would be proper in Martha's Vineyard. Nothing that's, basically, I've never done a color that's not timeless. And Barney Purple would simply not be timeless. So when I said that, a lot of people were like, no, that's horrible. Don't do that. Don't do that. That'd be, you know, hideous. So then I changed the story when I was talking to, you know, individuals about the color that I wanted to do as I was, you know, sharing my ideas, and I started calling it Black Cherry. And when I changed it to Black Cherry, people really started to perk up and they're like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I guess the lesson to that is you have to be careful in the words that you choose, because it automatically creates basically a vision that may or may not work. And I've known that for years, because when I'm talking to a potential client about colors, I have to be very selective in the words that I use. Otherwise, they completely just say, oh, no, I don't want to do that. So the question is, looking at this color right now, and I'll put this in before I ask the question, but, you know, the point that I want to make is you really can't tell the true color and the depth of this color and the beauty of this color watching this video or looking at the pictures. This is something you truly have to see in person. And in fact, we had this on display at a recent event we did in Dallas, and it was amazing the number of people that crowded around it going, oh my gosh, this color is beautiful. I would have never thought of doing that color. But the question that I'm going to ask you is, what type of emotion does it evoke? What do you feel with this color? Is this a color you could see in your driveway? Is this a color you could see yourself driving? Because my other question is, does it feel like royalty? Does it feel like it's, again, something that would be on a British estate? Because I feel like it does look very royal, very proper. And how the color came to be as a young boy, I won't even say a young man, but as a young boy growing up. And if you're subscribed to my email list, that you probably already heard the story. And I used the name damson because I was trying to describe the color, black cherry, damson berries, that type of stuff. But as a young man or young boy growing up, there was a salvage yard that was pretty close to where I live. And I would go there on the weekends and just roam around the salvage yard and dream, because they generally had some pretty interesting cars in the salvage yard. And I mean, just a wide array of cars. But there was one car that showed up, and that I remember that day that I came to the salvage yard, and it was a Rolls-Royce. And I was in awe. And I think part of the reason is because I'd never seen a Rolls-Royce, at least that model. I'd seen some older Rolls-Royces in my dad's shop, but this was a later model. I'd never seen one, a later model, in person, and that was the first attraction. And it was never that I was attracted to it because it's, you know, a very expensive vehicle. I'm attracted to things because of the story that's behind them and the craftsmanship, and knowing Rolls-Royce, you know, even at that time, was still handmade, hand-built. And I remember walking up to the door and going, do I open the door or do I not? Because, you know, when I would walk around the salvage yard, I was very careful to be respectful. And I made the decision to open the door, and I climbed in, and I would just sit in that car. And I did that a number of times, and I would just sit and I would look out over the bonnet and just think, one day I'm going to have a handmade vehicle. And the color was very, at least on my memory from many years ago, the color was this color. It was a two-tone though. I just remember looking at, let's just call it purple now that you've seen it, but I just remember sitting there and looking at the purple over that long, long bonnet and just thinking, that is beautiful. But I've always been attracted to colors that are not common, unique, one of a kind, because I always had a difficult time of getting a vehicle that was like everyone else's, but I've always had a difficult time of dressing like everyone else or being attracted to items that everyone else is attracted to. I've always been that individual, that Lone Ranger, that I wanted something completely different. And it's not to show off or anything. It's just, I want it to be unique, and I love how colors will really change emotion. So I think that's enough about color, but I'd love to hear your comments. What do you think about the color? And is this a color that you could see in your driveway? Is this a color you could see yourself driving? And I've got to say, I'm loving driving this one. And but it's a color too that when the sun starts to come down, it looks black. But when the sun is on it like this, it's beautiful. Well, I say it looks black. It doesn't actually look black. It's a blue, gray, lavender when the sun starts to come down. You can tell it's not black even when it's dark, but the sun really makes it pop and makes me fall in love with it. So anyway, that's my question. So on this one, of course, we have our standard German handmade grill, which I love these grills. And I've been thinking about doing a new design on grills. I'd love to hear your comment on that too. If we should change the design up a little bit. And in fact, we have a design coming out on a new build on a 110 that's a really pretty lavender blue. You notice I said lavender blue because if I gave you the straight out color, you go, oof, that's not going to work. But anyway, so our standard grill, and then of course our exclusive Helderburg bumper. This is what we've actually built this bumper. And then you just notice the cutouts where we created a die to be able to move it back in. In other words, create the recessed, because I mean, we could have just cut circles and called it done, but that would have been the shortcut. That wouldn't have been the long way, the proper way. That wouldn't have been considered. And then the Helderburg logo. And what we did with this though is it's a thicker metal, so it can really take some abuse. And also you'll see the very high approach angle. So if you decide to take a Helderburg off-road, you've got a really high approach and departure angle. And if you've not been on the website lately, I encourage you to go to helderburg.com because we have a number of events coming up. And depending when you watch this, hopefully you don't miss the opportunity to come here to Northwest Arkansas, where we're going to do the Helderburg expedition. And that's where we're going to drive through the Ozarks. It'll be a mix of country roads, gravel roads, and some off-road. And that's going to be really enjoyable, but depending when you watch the video. But if you've missed it this year, you can always try to sign up for next year. Moving across, of course, the louvers on the bonnet. And the louvers on the bonnet, the reason that I do that is it's really a celebration to Bentley and Bugatti and the cars of the 20s and the 30s, because they would do that for cooling. This serves no purpose other than a design cue. And again, everything on a Helderburg is considered. But when I say that, we don't do something just simply because we can. We do it for a purpose. It needs to fit into the design, because as you're looking at Dunhill right now, I really think you will agree with me that your eye travels across it. There's not one individual thing that you go, oof, what was that? Well, you're trying to make a statement there. Everything flows, and that's critically important. I mean, you'll see a number of, for example, builds out there in a classic Defender, and I see things that just don't work. For example, I will see one and it's a beachy color and it has street wheels and street tires on it, but it's a beach design. And then they add checker plate on top of the wings here. And then they, end up adding a roof rack. And it's like, all right, what are you trying to be? Are you creating a Defender that is a street Defender that's going to, roll through Martha's Vineyard or Miami Beach? And then you add these adventure components on it and it just doesn't work. Or the way colors, I've seen some different colors, the way they would do it. And I'm like, it should be a complement. It should not be a contrast. Everything should work together. At least that's the world of Defenders according to Paul. I mean, take it for what it's worth. Moving around, headlights. The headlights are our newest design. Our design we used to have was the broken beam on the side, but unfortunately, a couple companies decided to start mass producing those, and they became common that other individuals could buy those headlights, and we've seen a number of Defenders start being built, or I don't know about being built, but a number of Defenders where they had the broken beam headlights and it could have been mistaken for a Helderberg. And that's the thing, we don't ever want another Defender to be mistaken for a Helderberg. And my entire goal from starting the company was to create a classic Defender that even if the badges were removed, you could say that's a Helderberg. And that's everything from the stance, the grille, all the design elements. So these headlights serve a really nice purpose. We did a lot of engineering, we took a lot of time to design these, and they took a while. And they're serving a couple purposes. One, to show authenticity, that it truly is a Helderberg, because that's clearly something that we have to do at this day and time, it seems. That we have other builders that are putting trucks on their website and they're calling it a Helderberg, and it's not a Helderberg. We did not build it. We've never even touched it or seen it. There's also individuals that are selling trucks on the secondary market calling it a Helderberg, and it's clearly not. We never built the truck. So it has the rose gold H right here in the headlight. It has the Roman numerals when we started, but these 4 LED beams, I don't know if you can see it in the video right now, but the upper beams are more of a projector and the lower beams are more of a wide angle. So see the side of the roads, see further out, but of course the headlights are not on. These are more or less just a driving light. So it's a very, very subtle impact. But when these lights come on, and then of course we have the beams that are on this side too. So not counting the 4 here, you have 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and then 1 here. And again, it's all about projector and wide angle to make it safer to drive at night, because a lot of Helderbergs do end up in Colorado, Utah, Sun Valley, Idaho, Jackson Hole, Montana, so a lot of western states, and there's nothing on those roads for miles other than wildlife. And then of course we have a lot that end up on the East Coast and a lot that end up in California. And East Coast, a lot of deer, and in California, you don't really have to worry about wildlife. At least I don't think you do. So other than that, of course, our LED lights here, and then you'll notice the billet aluminum pieces here. This is a new thing. We're always developing, redesigning, improving things. And the billet aluminum has the Helderberg logo, the Roman numerals. But the big reason I did this is because I just don't like plastic. Plastic on a vehicle, that's a modern car. And if I want plastic, I drive the modern car. If I want metal and I want, craftsmanship and with a little bit of a rugged feel, then that's why I'm in a Helderberg. But it takes more time, but it's more considered, it's more thought. And I think maybe it goes back to being a young boy. Maybe you can relate to this, even if you're a young, when you were a young lady, that you would get something. And at least this is the way I was. I would get a bicycle, and even if it was I never got a brand new bicycle, but even if the bicycle was in really good shape, I wanted to put my own little modifications, my own little personality touches to it. And that's what I do with a Helderberg, that I spend a lot of time, pretty much every day, thinking, what else could we improve? What else could we do? How do we design it even better than the last design? And that's the thing. And I think that's the case. And I think you can see that in the videos and the pictures, that it just looks like, not looks like, it is, that every Helderberg that we create, each one just gets better and better and better. Which brings me to the point, the amount of R&D, research and development that we're doing, and the amount of money that I am spending on this, and people are going, why? You're doing things that people won't even notice. And I was like, I'm not doing it for others, I'm doing it for myself. And that's important to me, because I don't play golf and I don't get into sports, so this occupies my time while Christy is in the barn with the horses. So things, for example, the louvers, that was added in, but even the windshield washer jet, that is not the standard jet. This is a billet aluminum jet. This was handmade, and what I'm talking about is the sprayer for the windshield. I mean, I just, using the sprayer, the original one, is a little plastic piece. It looks cheap, because it is, and the way it would spray on the windscreen just wasn't efficient. So different design sprayer jet. I just felt it was important. This one is a turbo diesel, And if you follow me, you know I love turbo diesels for the simple reason is this is what a Defender was engineered to have. It was not engineered to have a V8 with 400 horsepower, 700 horsepower. That's power that you simply can't use. That's a vehicle, or that's an engine that has all of these known issues because that engine was designed for whether it be a Blazer, a speedboat, a K5, K5 Blazer, a classic Bronco, just whatever. It's a replacement engine off of a crate, and I feel like that's the shortcut, that's the short way. And the end result is, what do I really want? And that's what I had to ask myself, because I went down that path originally with my classic Defender, that I had one commissioned, and I fell into that trap talking to the individuals that were designing, or not designing, but building my classic Defender, and I knew exactly what I wanted, and horsepower was not part of the discussion. What I did want is I wanted to be able to get in my classic Defender, and I wanted to be able to drive it like an everyday car. I wanted it to have power to pull out into traffic. I wanted to be able to pass cars if I needed to, but power and speed was not my core consideration. It was more like safety, but I fell into that talk of 400 horsepower, and as an American boy, it's like, oh yeah, 400, 500, let's go for 700 horsepower. But it simply doesn't make sense because I have sports cars and they're designed to go fast and designed to do all of that stuff. But again, I fell into it. I got that 110 with that LS3 in it, and it wasn't enjoyable. It was noisy, it was loud, the engine was hot, I could feel it in the cabin, it would overheat in a day like today, and I'm like, what did I do? So it didn't make sense. But the turbo diesel, the amount of re-engineering that we've done, it just complements. And the beauty is, the turbo diesel that's in here is the original block. So this is a numbers matching vehicle, and I have plenty of power. I can do 75 miles an hour down the road if I choose to, even though this is the aerodynamics of a cinder block, and it has a soft top, so it's going to be noisy, but I can pull out into traffic, I can pass people, I can do everything I want to do, but more importantly, I can drive in the sand, I can drive on the snow, I can drive up the side of a mountain because I have a tremendous amount of torque, and it's not about horsepower. And I learned that very early on, because when I had my LS3 and I went out with a group of other friends, all with Land Rovers, and they were able to outperform me by far. It was dirt roads, it was off-road, it was in the snow, and all I would do is spin the tires and get stuck. So turbo diesel, the beauty of it is it has our connecting rods, it has our crankshaft, it has our design of an intercooler. So we designed a lot of the internals and a lot of the accessories, the exhaust system, everything else. And by doing that, we've kept it numbers matching, but we've also made it where it's even more drivable. And what we've also done is the original, the restored, the classic Land Rovers had known issues, like it would blow head gaskets and that type of stuff. But we've rectified all of that. And that's the way I set out years ago, is how do I take this beautiful vehicle, this iconic vehicle that still turns heads. 1983 was the first one, but it still turns heads and it makes us feel something emotional. But how do I take that vehicle and make it to the point that I could drive it every single day? And that's what we've been doing for years. And anyone that drives a Helderburg, they'll tell you it does everything. It has a very small turning radius. It stays very flat when you're on an on-ramp and off-ramp. I can hit a corner really fast. It stays flat. It never feels unstable. But again, online, people start referring to our builds as the Helderburg stance. And you'll notice that it does have a wider stance than anything else. And that took a lot of engineering to be able to do. We don't use wheel spacers, just so you know that. But all right, enough about that. Now, I think what we really have to do is let's talk about a soft top. Let's take a look at the side, because I would definitely want you to see what it looks like at a side profile, but you definitely want to watch all of this video, and I hope you're comfortable. I hope you have your drink, because I am going to take it for a drive, And I'm also going to take the top off too, because I've had a number of individuals ask me, what does it look like with the top off? Not this one specifically, but soft tops. So let's look at the side profile. So did you notice anything change? We changed the angle. We come onto this side where now it's in the shade. So here's the question. What color is it now? Look how it changed colors. And that's what I love about choosing colors. I mean, we could always play it safe and we could go with an original Land Rover color, but what fun is it in that? Original Land Rover color says, hey, I have a restored Defender original Land Rover color. And this is a bespoke. This is custom. This is re-engineered. This is something that you should celebrate who you are as an individual, your personality, the things you, with a custom Helderburg, in my opinion, sorry, I'm getting a little antsy here, a little amped up, but this is quite possibly a once-in-a-lifetime thing that you're doing to spoil yourself, whether you're celebrating a stage in life or just saying, that's it, I just want to do it. So my point is, do you really want the original Land Rover color? Do you really want the color that's playing it safe? Or do you want a color that, I don't know. I love that color. And I have a lot of people go, oh, I really like that, but I don't know, that they start having that fear that I just don't know, or like people will refer to when they see me out, at events and the way I'm dressed, and maybe I've got a bright color outfit on. They're like, that looks sharp, but I sure couldn't pull it off. And that's where I stop you right there and go, yes, if it's something that speaks to you, yes, you can pull it off. And you just kind of need to let go and don't be so worried about what other people think, because this is your life, so you need to make it your life. And I decided to do that many, many years ago. In fact, I think I've always done that, but if I want to wear yellow pants, I'm going to wear yellow pants. And if I want to drive an orange 130, I'm going to drive an orange 130, because I don't care what other people think, and it makes me smile. This color makes me smile. All right, enough with that. So we talked about the color, but then let's talk about little accents, because it is a Helderburg and everything needs to be discovered. Nothing is announced on it. So the side vent, I asked my buddy Edward, which is our engraver, the individual that's doing an engraving for us now. I said, it'd be really beautiful to do some engraving on this side vent, something really subtle. I didn't do it up here because I felt like it would just be too much to do one here and one there and one here. So I just did the one side vent, and I did this very British English shotgun motif. I forget exactly what this motif is called, but it's this is what you would see on a Holland & Holland or a Purdy or a Fox or some type of a shotgun like that. And it's just, I think it's beautiful because you can see where it has the silver and the black and a little bit of the brass, because this is brass is what this is. So it just really comes out. And then of course the arches, the wider arches with the black trim here, and that's to protect the paint. Oh, the paint, this is what that's why you need to go to the website and see about the event, so you can come see a Helderburg in person, because you will not experience this on any other custom build or restoration. This is what you experience on a Helderburg, and that's feeling this paint and the depth, and it just feels like glass. But what you'll also feel in a Helderburg is just the lines and how the two go together, the side of the wing and the top of the wing. I know you want to call this a fender, but it's called a wing. And you can just feel as you run your finger down that the spacing is exact, it's perfect. But what you could also see by looking at a Helderburg when you're looking is you can tell that when we did the painting that everything was disassembled, that this was not a paint job that we rolled a truck in complete and then went around and sprayed it. That doesn't happen on a Helderburg. It simply doesn't. That this piece was separate, this piece is separate, this piece is separate, all the front pieces are separate, and everything was painted individually, that we have jigs, we have these racks that hold the various parts, and every part is painted. It's painted on the front side, it's painted on the back side, it's painted on the edges, and this isn't just one coat of paint or two coats of paint. I mean, because if you understand the creation of a vehicle, and when you're creating, and we'll use the word restored or resto-mod, or in this case, re-engineered for a Helderburg, because restoration and resto-mod are completely two different things. A resto-mod is add a GMV8, put a body on there that you probably ordered from China that was not hand painted, it was painted in China. The body cost $9,000, put it on a galvanized chassis, put a GMV8 in it, and that's a resto mod. That's not an authentic Defender is what it is. It's essentially a kit car or a fake Rolex. And then the restoration is restoring it to its original quality. And originally, the Land Rover paint job was subpar at best. And I'll tell you that story for another reason, but it was how Land Rover came into being and why it was aluminum versus steel and all that. But the history is fascinating. So the amount of coats of paint that go into a Helderburg is astonishing. You have a single stage paint job, which is basically essentially one coat and then a coverage coat is all it is. You have a 2-stage, you have a 3-stage, you have a 4-stage. So when we're doing a color like this, this is much more than a 4-stage paint job. This is easily could run as many as 8 coats of paint. So you think about the cost and the preparation, because not only is the paint extremely expensive, when you ship it and all of the regulations, they charge you a tremendous amount of money just to be able to ship paint. So paint cost, and then the chemicals that go into it. So you just think the cost of paint has gone up significantly. But every time you're doing a coat of paint, you have to go back through and you have to rough it up again. You have to sand. So the amount of man hours that can go into the paint job for a really good paint job can easily be 400 hours in a paint job of what you see on a Helderburg. But the only way you can really tell that is, because if you're watching videos and pictures, is to see it in person and see the perfection of the line, see that there's no paint buildup, because if everything was together and we sprayed it, it would just fill it in is what it would do. And that's not the way to do it. That's the cheap way. That's essentially, how do I build as many trucks as I can, as quick as I can? And that's not what we do. So you can see everything is individually painted. And then I'm off that soapbox now, okay? All right, but I get excited about the paint. And because the paint is what sets the tone. The paint is what changes the emotion. And if you do the paint properly, it will last generations. If you do the paint improper, and starting with your preparation, if your preparation isn't proper, for example, if we were to fill the wings with body filler and glaze and Bondo, that if we were trying to fix dents that way, that would come back to haunt us in a short amount of time. Whether it's a year or 3 years or 5 years, who knows, but it would be back to haunt us. So it's doing it the proper way, the long way, the harder way. Essentially, it takes more time to do it the way I'm talking about. And then moving in, what I did on this one, even though it's a soft top, I did do the full doors, but there is always the option to do what's called a half door, which in fact, I'm working on one that I don't even know if I should tell you the color right now, because if I say it, it'll probably ruin you. Just kind of like if I said, hey, I'm doing a purple Defender and you thought Barney, but I'll say it anyway. I'm doing a yellow Helderburg, just so you know. It's going to be yellow, but it's going to have features that you've never seen on a Helderburg before. And one of those features, though, you have seen this on a Helderburg, is the half doors. So we can do the half door, and instead of the door handle being out this way, it's an inset door handle. And that's just an old style door system. But on this one, I did the full door, so we have the regular window cranks to be able to roll the window up, and then our regular door handle, which is a billet aluminum here. And even though this is a soft top, we still do all of our sound deadening. I mean, you can hear how solid this is. And that's because I've always loved classic Porsches, and there's something so satisfying about a classic Porsche door. And honestly, Porsche has lost that, and I struggle with that because there's something magical when you're Porsche 356 or Porsche 911 and you shut that door and it goes thunk. I love that. And it's part of the way they did it originally with the hand craftsmanship, that they would do the seams and they would fill it with lead. And I just thought that was magical. So anyway, nice solid doors, but we have a soft top. But the thing is, when a rock comes up and hits the body, it doesn't make that tinny sound. In fact, you probably won't even hear the rock. And also by doing this too, it helps the insulation of the truck, because the soft top, while it is a soft top, it is pretty thick, and it is a 3-layer soft top with a middle layer that has an insulating factor. So I have people that say, well, can I drive it, you know, all year round, and I live in a cold climate? Yes, you can drive it all year round, even if you're in a cold climate, but it's not going to be as warm as a hard top. But the heater system, once it heats up, it does a pretty good job, and you do have heated seats. But if you're not planning on taking the top off and enjoying that, or at least rolling the windows up, then maybe a hard top is the best direction for you. So moving back to the soft top itself, the soft top comes off really easy. In fact, we're going to take it off. So continue watching the video. I'll take it off and you'll see how easy it comes off. It's a pretty quick process. Once you know where the straps are at and how to undo it, you're probably about 10 minutes. And then putting it back on is a very easy process. And I have a lot of individuals that maybe experienced a Jeep and they're like, oh, that top is so hard to get off and get back on. Well, this isn't a Jeep, even though I have people that will walk up to me and go, that's really cool, nice Jeep. And it's not a Jeep. So anyway, the top is simple as this. It just clips under. It's got this clip system right here. And it's just got a piece of plastic where it folds under and clips in. And that's how easy it is to start pulling everything off like that. And then same thing in the back and some straps. But I'll show you that in a while. This one does have the adventure rack. In other words, what I'm saying is this is a roll cage. And the system goes all the way down to the floor, all the way into the chassis. And then there's something to be said about a 90 though, because the beauty of a 90 is if you have 2 other people or 4 other people or 3 people that are traveling with you, you know, 2 of you in the front and they're sitting back here, you're all part of the conversation. Versus a 110, when you have 2 other people and they're in the cargo area, you're talking through the second row seat and conversation is not as, I guess, interactive is what I would say. So looking at the stance, I love this stance, and the best way for me to describe a Helderburg stance from the side, especially on a 90, the first thing that comes to mind for me is a bulldog. I don't know why, but that's what comes to mind for me. So let's look at the interior, because that's where the story of Dunhill carries on, and also celebrating some things that my father was very enthusiastic about. And it's just a lot of little things that, again, nothing is screaming at you, nothing is announced. It's just one of those things as you explore around the cabin, you're like, oh wow, this is, I didn't even notice this. And so let's take a look at that. So earlier on, I told you about how the color was inspired and how everything came because of that Rolls-Royce that was in that salvage yard that I would sit in. And so let's talk about the interior color and how I was inspired by the interior of the Rolls-Royce. The color, and at least what I remember from back then, the interior color was the lighter color that you see in Dunhill right now. But that was the only color in the cabin except for the dash pad itself, which was black. But I chose to go with a 2-tone seat, black on the sides, just to create a contrast. But more importantly, when I was thinking about the design and I was saying, all right, what color top do I want? What color of a soft top do I want? And of course, I thought about beige. That would be a color to go with, but black just seemed to make the most amount of sense. And since the black, the soft top, especially on the inside, but on the outside. So when you were approaching the vehicle and you see the black top, and then you look in the window, then the sides of the seat should be black too to continue that color. And then we create the transition versus it being a very stark change from black to this very light, let's call it a buckskin, which is not the official color, but to the buckskin. So I didn't want to create that stark contrast, so I felt like the black would pull it in. Also too, I was concerned that if I just went with the light buckskin color, the cream color only, then how would that work with the rest of the cabin? Because I was trying to create a little more of a unique design, noticing This is all engraved by hand. This is, of course, the locking pegs. This is all the engraving. And if I did this all on a buckskin color, it wouldn't really stand out. It would be, and I'm not trying to make it stand out, but it would be hard to really appreciate it, in my opinion. And that's just kind of what I felt was doing this. So I wanted the engraving to be a nice little feature, but I didn't want it to scream like, whoa, engraving. And here's another thing, talking about when you say something and how people visualize. I talked to some friends and I said, you know, I met this guy and he can do all of this engraving. He does it on shotguns. He does it on Berettas and Holland and Hollands. And I want to do that in the interior. And they're like, oh, that's going to be too gaudy. And I was like, no, I don't think it is. So if you were to look at a picture of another Helderburg where we have the billet aluminum door handles here, and they're not engraved, and I'm not saying they look gaudy, but they are very noticeable. In fact, they stand out, especially if it was on this black or a dark brown. That's where your eye goes. It just goes right to that door handle or the opening mechanism or the locking peg. And I was like, I don't think it will. I think it's going to make it more subtle. I think it's going to make it flow. So, and I think, my opinion, that's exactly what it's done. It's just making everything flow. And when you're doing something this custom, this bespoke, why wouldn't you say, how am I going to put my own personality, my own personal touches? Because the easy way would have been just stick with the billet aluminum. That's cool, that's different. But doing the engraving and where it has a purpose behind it. And in fact, what we're doing with the engraving is we're really personalizing it. I have a client and she's into fox hunting. So it's a fox hunting scene. And then inside the locking mechanism here, if we were to open this up, that in the back side of it here, you can see that it does have the name here, but it doesn't have to have the name of the build. It can have whatever scene you want. And in fact, on Raleigh, if you've not seen Raleigh, go check it out. That's my personal one pin. And it was in celebration of my father, but then I also pulled Lucy into it too. And you'll see Lucy's bust here. In addition, Lucy's bust is on the lever to recline the seat back. And so I did a lot of engraving. But I continued the engraving through the cabin on this one. So the locking pegs, the door handles, the full mechanism here, and even the heater vents up here on the top of the dash are all engraved. And then around the gauges, that is all engraved too. So it makes it for a really nice touch. The seats are heated. They do have a lumbar support, which I really like the lumbar support. Of course, I could see someone saying, oh, why don't we do power lumbar? Where is it? Let's grab that. You'll love this. It's like a blood pressure cuff. So you pump it up and then you want to let it down and it lets the air out. So I thought that was pretty cool. This one, I did not do the locking center console. I kept it simple on that. And this is to be driven around. It's with the top off. And of course we could do a locking center console if somebody feels like they need to lock things up. But that's not a concern in the part of the country I live. It's just, we don't worry about that. We leave the keys in the car. And in reality, it is a soft top. So if someone wanted to get in and wanted to steal something, I wouldn't want them to rip my top. I would just say, whatever, if you need it that bad, you can have it. But anyway, so, all right, let's move to the back. And I'm really excited to show you with the top off and go for a drive because that's coming soon. So at the back of Dunhill, backup camera, I figured I should point that out. The screen, I didn't even talk about it when I was on the interior. So the audio system is a custom design. It's our bespoke system for a soft top, which is different than a hard top. And the soft top, it takes a little different of a different strategy for the audio system. It has the speakers that are handmade in France, the amplifier handmade in Italy. It's a good sounding system. This is a party vehicle. It really is. Go to the beach, crank up the stereo, have the cooler in the back, and this becomes your central point to go and get your drinks and, of course, drive on the beach. And there's nothing like driving on the beach or even driving in the snow. Yeah, I've done that in soft tops too. But notice it's got a half door And a question that I get a lot of times is, can you have a hard top and a soft top? In other words, can I have a soft top and then have a removable hard top like a Jeep? And the simple answer is yes, you can. Would I recommend it? No, I would not. And the reason being is the hard top, that accessory is made by a third-party company, and fit and finish just is not that great. So if you put that hard top in or on, it will have water ingress. So if you're driving through a rainstorm, you're going to end up with water in the cabin. And it also doesn't give you much of an insulating factor, so it doesn't really serve a purpose. So I would say choose a hard top or choose a soft top, and you'll be happier in the long run, because with the soft top, water ingress is very minimal. I'm not going to tell you you won't get any water in the cabin, because if it's, depending on the rainstorm that you're in, you could definitely get water in the cabin, but it's not a big deal. I mean, you pull the rug out of it and you're good to go. So also, the other thing being a soft top that I'll have individuals, should we do a vinyl interior? And no, you shouldn't do a vinyl interior. The leather in a Helderburg is our own leather. And depending which leather you go with, we either have a Scandinavian leather, which is the hand-colored leather, which you'll see it has like a patina to it, or our Scottish leather. This has the Scottish leather, which is the thicker leather. It's almost a boot thickness leather, but it has a very high wax content. In other words, it was designed to really not be bothered by moisture or by UV. It will last an extremely long time. And every few years, you'll want to go ahead and, oil it up a little bit, and it will stay looking like this forever. But here's the beauty about this leather. The smell is here for years. And when individuals come and see us at the different events, that's the first thing that they always seem to say is, well, other than the color and the paint and the stance, but they're like, oh, smell that leather. And you can definitely smell the leather. So I hope I answered all the questions on soft tops. I'm sure there'll be more when we go on the drive that I'll think of. I mentioned the backup camera, also LED lights here with the billet aluminum that we do, and then the corner bracket. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, the corner bracket is one of our signature statements that we're saying, all right, let's do this little design, this little cue here. This is not typical Land Rover. If you see someone doing this, just know that we've been doing this for years. Let's put it that way. But what I'm also showing by this too is a Helderburg completely disassembled, and it's like a Lego set. You have the top cap, which let me remove this real quick. You have this top cap right here. You have this piece, this rear piece, the side piece. These are all individual pieces, and everything is painted separately. But by doing this, what I'm showing, what I'm representing is this is a Helderburg, and it was completely disassembled. Every nut, every bolt, every washer, every wire, every part has been re-engineered, restored. It's been brought back to better quality than it was originally. And there's a big difference between what individuals will call custom, because a lot of individuals say it's custom, and what they mean by custom is it's a color, that they put a different color on it, they chose the color, and they put a different color interior. In my world, what custom means is re-engineered, because the coil springs are custom, the radius arms, custom, the crankshaft, the cylinder head, the turbo, the intercooler, the injection pump, the steering arms are all custom, because the goal is, how do I take a classic Defender and make it a daily driver where I would want to choose this over my modern car? So there you go. This has the off-the-shelf part, which is a North American spec bumper, and just did this. It provides a little more of a step right here with rubber versus my other design bumper that is custom, by the way. It's not an off-the-shelf. It's a corner bracket here, and it is a bigger piece. You can also do an additional step that is a fold-down step right here, so then you get one more of a step here, and then you can step up and step it into the back here, because this is the way you would enter a 90 soft top, is through the back, or a 90 hard top for that matter. The seating for 4, and then 4 seat belts. And then, are you ready for the shameless plug? If you haven't ordered my book, I'd appreciate it. Just go ahead and order it. and you can get it on Amazon. So it's A Gentleman's Guide to an Intentional Life. And if you are thinking about a classic Defender, I think this book will really speak to you. And I will forewarn you, because I got corrected in Dallas by a young lady, and she said, you talk about a gentleman's cruiser, and you mentioned gentlemen a lot, but I also love classic Defenders. And in fact, she, if I'm not mistaken, I believe she did. She said, and your book is suited for a gentlewoman and in addition to a gentleman. And that's true, because there's nothing in here specific to a male. So anyway, order my book. I think you'll enjoy it. Love to hear the comments, and it's on Amazon. All right, moving back, exhaust system. Yeah, it's custom too. And the sound on this, it's a turbo diesel, but it sounds phenomenal. It's got a deep throaty sound, but it's not overly loud. This is not your grandfather's diesel Oldsmobile. And what I mean by that is, originally Oldsmobile tried to do a diesel many years ago, but they just took a gasoline engine and converted it to a diesel, and it didn't work so well. And it was noisy, it stunk, it just wasn't the ideal situation. This is a Helderburg, and where we re-engineered the engine and the drivetrain and the exhaust system and the brakes and everything else. It stops on a dime, it stops quickly, turning radius is really easy, it's easy to park, it sounds great, it's got plenty of power, you can get up and go, you can pass people, you can pull out into traffic and all that, but that's only if you need to, because the entire, really the persona and the purpose of this is to slow down and enjoy life. So we've talked about the exterior, we've talked about the interior. Now I think it's just fitting that we go for a drive.